First of all, let me say that no one acted with evil intent. No one knew what the terrible consequences were going to be. There was, let's say, a collective bargain. Not a collective bargain to do harm or to look the other way, but a collective bargain that it's kind of okay not to always be looking the right way at the right time. We all have our lazy moments. We all tire at the end of the day. The superhuman strength needed to pay attention to all the detail all of the time is too much. You know, my teacher used to tell me that I must try harder. I can assure you that I was trying hard enough. Night after night, I would work and fall asleep in my chair. And when I woke in the morning, I could barely read what I'd written. I was so tired. So tired. I couldn't keep everything in my head at once. I thought, just because I'm tired doesn't make me bad. We ask ourselves to be all-seeing and all-knowing. No government, no business, no band of brothers can possibly be expected to achieve that, let alone one person. But I read through all the testimony I was given. It was the most painstaking thing I've ever done. It took years, utterly exhausting. All the witnesses to the event, direct and indirect, reliable and not, angry and calm, thousands of pages of the written word. And what I found in every corner of every room was simply a lack of concentration, a faint weariness. Nothing that you'd particularly notice or think out of the ordinary, except in retrospect. A slip of the pen, an extra zero, a bad translation. But when you start looking for all of these momentary lapses, they start to appear everywhere. Once you stop forgiving, you will find yourself in a sea of microscopic faults. You know that jokey story about responsibility? The one with the 4 people named everybody, somebody, anybody, and nobody. Well, everybody wanted somebody to be responsible, and anybody would do. Nobody wanted to accept responsibility, but when they asked somebody to look into it, somebody found that everybody was responsible. It was exactly like that. Except it wasn't a joke. These were the facts. I decided, in the end, that everybody was at fault. I apportioned the blame perfectly evenly across the entire mass of humankind. I stood up and said, this is a collective failure. It wasn't manslaughter. It wasn't even corporate manslaughter. No, it was societal manslaughter. Everybody and nobody. Even worse, I came to the inedible conclusion that the leaders were actually the least to blame. They were charged with making complex decisions, and they made them the wrong way. Leaders are merely slightly less tired than the rest of us. People often say, what we need here is a little bit more leadership. Or, if only we had the political will. But if you go into a bargain with your fellow man that leaves the leadership to somebody else, you will get the quality of decision-making you deserve. So what was left to do? The finger needed to be pointed, and nobody was pointing it at themselves. It was a conspiracy, but of the many and not the few. I had to confess. To confess to my own fatigue, and to point the finger at myself. Of course, there was outrage at my conclusions. Outrage because people wanted the blame to be apportioned specifically and precisely. When I first took the job to look into it, a victim said to me, "If you find out who did this, I hope they burn in hell." You can understand the anger. When I passed a crowd of them in the street, I could feel their blistering gaze upon my skin. I was the person that was responsible to rest the agony of the earth on one set of shoulders. And I refused to do it. They say that sloth is a deadly sin, but it's no easier to resist than the others. Like a spreading disease, I found it everywhere I looked. If people were angry before I made my mind up, they were even angrier after. Angry and confused. How could my findings be so diffuse and so complex? It was a whitewash. I was an establishment figure who had protected the leaders and not the weak. I was pilloried and attacked, stones thrown at me in the street, death threats nailed to my door. And because, perhaps, I had offered the people forgiveness. I had shown mercy to our own weaknesses. I refused to simplify so that they could sacrifice a single individual, anybody, so that they could preserve the bargain that they had made unspoken among themselves. So I say to you now what I said to them. I forgive your tiredness. And I ask you to forgive me mine. For that statement, which may be the only statement I am truly proud of in my life. They said that I should burn too. And in the end, burn I did.